How does it feel to be Sanjeev Bhikchandani?
I'm just a regular, ordinary guy. Yeah.
What was that moment when you decided to create something like Naukri.com?
I quit my job and we launched Naukri as maybe the 21st small idea. And this one happened to be right place, right time, worked hard, worked smart, got lucky. It began to do well. ICICI Venture said to me within 1 week of investing the money, if you get hit by a bus, our money should be safe. If you get good people on board, they will snatch empowerment from you even if you don't give it to them. So there are a couple of things I had to learn along the way. Learn to delegate, learn to be dispensable. So today we have invested in maybe 85 or 90 startups. And we are the largest shareholders in Zomato and Policy Bazaar as well. So Dipinda was 28 when we invested. In 2017 or 18, he had come to me and said, we are getting into food delivery and not just in listings, restaurant listings. I said, man, that's hugely capital consumptive. Don't do it. He said, no, I got to do it. And that's what has built this company. And in COVID, that's what saved this company. When we invest in startups, right, you're investing behind entrepreneurs and founders who have huge self-belief. You can't tell them what to do.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, whichever part of the world you're dialing in from. Such a pleasure having you here. And today is very special as we're going to listen to somebody who has been a pioneer in several ways, shape, and form. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute delight, privilege, and pleasure to have with us Mr. Sanjeev Bhikchandani. Such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me, Gaurav.
Sanjeev, here's my first question to you. You've been a poster boy for so many entrepreneurs, not only in the country, worldwide. How does it feel to be Sanjeev Bhikchandani?
Actually, I'm just a regular, ordinary guy, yeah, and you don't feel any different. And you work for the day, every day, and life goes on.
Now, can you share with me? I'm sure this question has been asked from you on several occasions. What was that moment in your life when you decided to create something like Naukri.com?
So it wasn't one moment. So I first thought of being an entrepreneur when I was 12 years old. In those days, we didn't use the word entrepreneur. We used the word business, in those days, it was, at some point in time, I would like to start a business, right? So I'll tell you, so when you're very young and you're growing up, right, we all daydream, right? So when I was 10 years old, I saw Hathi Mere Sathi in Chanakya cinema. I wanted to be Rajesh Khanna. When I was 11 years old, I watched a cricket test match on TV and I wanted to be Sunil Gavaskar. And when I was 12 years old, I said sometime I should start a business. And it was one of those things, right? But this sort of aspiration didn't go away. By the time I was in class 11 or 12, I was articulating it to myself and to friends that I remember there was this classmate of mine, and he asked me, and what do you want to do in life? I was in class 12, I think. And I said, look, I want to start a business. I want to be an entrepreneur. And I said, what do you want to do? He says, I want to be a doctor. I want to get into AIMS. As things transpired, he got into AIMS. And I became an entrepreneur, much later, of course, but I became an entrepreneur. I went to college, studied economics. I worked for 3 years in advertising. Then I went to business school and I worked for 1.5, 2 years in marketing. And then I quit my job because I really didn't want a job, rising up the ranks in a large corporation, right? It did not appeal to me. And I didn't have any big idea, but I just didn't want that life. So I quit my job and we began to do some salary surveys, some trademark surveys. We did, for the next 7 years, we did some 20, 30 small things. I was very happy being a small entrepreneur with an office at home. And very often I could not take a salary. Sometimes I would, but mostly I wouldn't. In 97, we launched Naukri as maybe the 21st small idea. And this one happened to be right place, right time, worked hard, worked smart, got lucky. It began to do well. And by 98, we had understood that this could be a big idea after all. So stop doing everything else. Just focus on being an internet company. So from 90 to 97, we were doing a whole bunch of small things. 97, we launched Naukri. 98, we should just be an internet company if you got, and that's what we did. Year 2000, we raised venture capital from ICICI Venture after having bootstrapped Naukri for 3 years. And then life changed because now suddenly you had an external investor, you had a shareholder agreement, you had a board of directors, you had a big 5 auditor, you had an independent director of the board, you had an internal auditor, you had to give MISs every month, you were accountable, right? And you had committed to grow to a certain level so that your investor would get an exit by a certain time frame. So life became serious post raising venture capital. And as luck would have it, we were able to grow the company. We came to the 2000 meltdown and we survived. And we were able to list the company in 2006. Along the way, we diversified into matrimony, into real estate, into classifieds. After the IPO, we began to invest in other startups. But today, we have invested in maybe 85 or 90 startups. We're running a venture fund, actually 4 venture funds in collaboration with Temasek.
Wow.
And we are the largest shareholders in Zomato and Policy Bazaar as well.
Wow.
So life has come some distance from the time when I quit my job in 1990. It wasn't sort of one moment. It was a process.
Wow. Wow. Sanjeev, I personally believe that, and I heard it somewhere, that you cannot solve the problem with the same level of consciousness with which you created that. Let me just reiterate this sentence. You cannot solve a challenge with the same level of vibration with which you gotten into that. Now, help me understand in this entire journey from where you started in the year 1997 to where we are sitting there 2023, what are those traits that you had and you had to drop because they were not serving you? And what are those traits that you had to pick up along the way so that you can continue to strive, thrive, sustain, and grow?
I'll tell you what worked for us then and continues to work for us now. One is, I think, a pretty deep knowledge of the customer and very sharp focus on the customer, the consumer. And this I picked up in my first job at Lintas, straight after college. Really trying to understand what's in the customer's head, what the unsolved problems are, what the unmet needs are, and then producing a product that satisfies that, and therefore you succeed. The second thing that was with me, I think, this whole business of being persistent, not giving up. And the third is, working really hard. And the fourth, I think, was a willingness to postpone any sort of reward, personal reward. Just committing yourself to the company, the product, the customer, the cause, and paisa nahi bane to theek hai, baad mein aayega. It doesn't matter, right? What I was not good at, right? I'm not this great process guy. Not because I can't be, I'm just lazy, right? But you can't really grow a company without good processes. So, so you get other people into the team who can do that, who do that, and are good at it, and who understand it. And then you let them free to run. What I was not good at, see, when we launched Naukri, I was running a tiny company out of the servant quarter of the garage for 7 years. Therefore, I was firmly in control and I was a de facto proprietor, even though it's a private limited company, and nothing would get done unless I said so. Right? Because there were just 7, 8 people, and I was the person who's taking all the decisions, right? Now, having done that for 7 years, and then to having bootstrapped Naukri for a further 3 years, when we raised venture capital, one of the first things that ICICI Venture said to me within 1 week of investing the money, says your first job is to make yourself dispensable. If you get hit by a bus, our money should be safe. And they use these words, right? If you get hit by a bus, our money should be safe. So there have to be others in the company to work without you required. So you get in good people, and then I was simply not used to delegating because for 10 years I had not delegated. I had never run a large team, right? So that took some learning. Willingness to let go was something that took me a year or two to figure out. But then, if you get good people on board, they will snatch empowerment from you, even if you don't give it to them. And a bit of that happened to me. And then I got used to delegating. So there are a couple of things I had to learn along the way. Learn to delegate, learn to be dispensable.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. I loved it when you spoke about have a better understanding of your customers. I think it's written in all the management books, all the business books. And I think the way you shared that, it brings it more alive for me. Then you spoke about working hard and avoiding the instant gratification. The second point that you spoke, not giving up. I would like to double click on that, if you may. They say that it's important for an individual to understand when to let go and when to give up. And here you are talking about not to give up. I'm sure you would have let go of a lot of things as well. How can one decide if this is a moment to let go of something, someone? You might be attached to an idea, but it's not serving your customers. And that's the time you need to let go. So how did you decide that this is a thing that I need to stick to? Let me just.
So not giving up, I meant I did not give up the idea of being an entrepreneur. I'm going back to a job. Letting go of a product, look, if it's not selling or it's not growing, right? And something else is, right? So we were doing salary surveys. We did those for 8 years, right? 97 we launched Naukri. First year sales were 2.35 lakhs. Second year sales were 18 lakhs. So I'd never seen anything grow 7x in 1 year, even of a small base. Now, these look like small numbers today. But believe me, for a company working out of a servant quarter of the garage in my house, they were large numbers.
Yeah.
Salary survey we were doing, 10, 12 lakhs. Suddenly, this is bigger than the salary survey in 1 year. So numbers told us that, listen, this thing has legs. And so forget about salary surveys. Let's focus on this. So 1998, we did our last salary survey. So the customer tells you, the market tells you, the business performance tells you, the profits tell you, the margins tell you.
Yeah. And I love it when you said that when you onboard good people who can empower themselves, they're going to snatch away things from you. How was it for you?
If you don't let them do that, they will leave.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned very early on in my first job in advertising, the importance of people and how to manage people.
Yeah.
So I was at the entry level, I joined as an executive trainee in client servicing. So essentially, if you're a trainee in client servicing in an advertising agency, you are at the bottom of the food chain, right? You get kicked by everybody. You are responsible, you are accountable, but you don't have any authority. And your job is to get work done by people who don't report to you, who are older than you, have many more years of work experience than you. And there are other account servicing executives who are competing for their time. And if you don't deliver output in time, they're not accountable, you are accountable. So you learn to coax, cajole, beg, plead, somehow get work done from people who don't really need to do work for you. They'll get the salary anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And that, I think, very frustrating for the first, 6, maybe 10, 12 months. But gradually you get the hang of it without realizing you got the hang of it. But when I look back, or I look back after 3 years, I realized I was a very different person at the end of 3 years than I was when I joined in terms of people skills.
Yeah. What is the difference?
Difference, I think, was a lot of it was humility. I became very humble. So, I went in there saying I studied economics in Stevens College. I am chucked enough to come here. And, that attitude was totally gone. Everybody is the same.
Yeah.
So all rough edges were ironed out.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. All the rough edges are gone, and your journey to enter this world of humility and letting go of what you've done in the past, and rather than living in the past laurels, you were willing to operate from a space of equality. Help me understand, what was the biggest challenge, and what do you think? Why don't leaders, especially, delegate? What is it that they have been tied to that they find it difficult to release?
Leaders typically have huge self-belief that I know best and only I can do it. Or I can do it best. Right? Somewhere you have to make a transition. Hey, I'm very good, but there could be others who are good, even better. And my way may not be the only way.
Yeah.
Right. So when we invest in startups, right, you're investing behind entrepreneurs and founders who have huge self-belief. Right. Now we have built a successful company. Now it's very easy for us to say, hey, we know best. We'll tell you what to do.
Yeah.
But the founder's not going to listen to you simply because they believe they know best. So it's always a conversation. You put in the money, but the most you can have is a conversation. You can't tell them what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Sanjeev, in my limited understanding, having interacted with few entrepreneurs who have been blessed to have funding from outside, I've heard that once you invest, you become accountable. Of course, you are accountable to your VCs. You are accountable to people who are funding in the organization. And they tell me that the life becomes really difficult because the people who are funding in your organization, they are going to intervene in every small thing in your life. And what you are telling me is a very different story altogether. What you're saying is, I'm really happy that you're telling me that the best that you can have is a conversation.
So look, as an investor, you're not in the company. You're not there 24/7 doing all the blocking and tackling. That the people who are full-time in the company, the management team, the founders, everybody else, that's what they do. So they know more than you. You can perhaps give some strategic inputs here, strategic inputs there.
Yeah.
But eventually, so if I tell a founder 10 things, he might do 2. And he'll do those 2 which he agrees with. Right?
Yeah.
The fact is, as an investor, you're going in not because you're smarter than that guy. That guy is smarter than you for that thing. And that's why you're backing him.
Yeah.
Now, if you were not smarter than you on that thing, then you would not invest in behind him.
Precisely. So let's take one step forward in this direction only. Now, he's a founder, here's a team coming to you. Here you have hired a new leader in your organization, and you know your subject far better than anybody else would, right? And you know business really well because you are one of the most celebrated entrepreneurs today that we have in the country. How do you hold yourself and yet ensure that you unleash the potential in the person that you have been dealing with? What's the process that you take?
Again, learning. For the first 2 years of investing, I would tell people what to do and nobody would listen. Okay. And I would get very frustrated. So I stepped aside as CEO of the operating company in 2010 and I became a full-time investor. Right now, so here I was with an organization of 2,000 people reporting to me. Right? And suddenly I had 1.5 people. And I had begun to invest and the founders wouldn't listen to me. Necessarily. They did humor me, they hear me out, but finally they do what they want to do.
Yeah.
Right. And they were not rude, they were polite. Right. But I would find it very frustrating. So gradually I got into the habit. First, I understood that, listen, this won't happen this way. If you have an entrepreneur who listens to you all the time, he's probably the wrong entrepreneur to have invested behind. He's got to have his own convictions and his own beliefs and his own strategies. And that's what you're backing, his genius or her genius. Right. And once I understood that, then I said, okay, fine. I've got to suggest. I've got to have conversations. And if the penny doesn't drop, it doesn't drop. And live with it.
So it's okay to bite your own tongue.
I'll tell you the case of Deepinder Goyal, right?
Yeah.
I must have disagreed with him many, many times. Maybe, okay. So let's say I disagreed with him 10 times. The first 9 times I was right. The 10th time I was wrong. And that 10th time made all the difference. Because in 2017 or 18, he had come to me and said, we are getting into food delivery. And not just in listings, restaurant listings. I said, man, that's hugely capital consumptive. Are you sure margins are low? Can you raise so much capital? What if you don't get an next round? Don't do it. And he said, no, I got to do it. I want to do it. And he went ahead. And that's what has built this company. And in COVID, that's what saved this company.
Beautiful. Sanjeev, the example that you have shared, it's such a feast to my ears. And I'll tell you why. What I'm listening is, here is a leader who's willing to provide an experience without getting attached to that experience. And she knows when to step back as well. It's okay, let the other person experiment, let the other person take a chance. And I am here to support you. Help me understand, how has your relationship with different founders impacted their performance, the way they show up in the world?
You have to ask them that more than me. But wherever we've selected well and back the right entrepreneur, they don't really need too much help from me or from us. So the key to successful early stage investing is to invest behind an entrepreneur who's going to succeed anyway, with you or without you, right? So Zomato would have succeeded anyway, because money is a commodity. If we didn't give it, somebody else would have given it, right? Policy Bazaar would have succeeded anyway. And I like to believe that several of our other investments, which are doing well, would have done well anyway. So you can add 1, 2, 5, maybe 5% value, but if you back the right entrepreneur, he's going to succeed anyway.
Yeah. It reminds me of a conversation that I was having with one of the most celebrated coaches in the world. And I asked him, what is your criteria to find coaches for yourself? What I can see is the list of the people that you have coached in your life. All these people are so successful. And his response was very similar to what you mentioned, Sanjeev. He said, all these people are going to be successful anyways. My just being there with them further accelerated their journey. How do you find that's the right entrepreneur to invest on? What is your definition of right? What are those parameters that you have to look at?
See, we like to be the first check into a company, which means that when we go in, the founders are probably very young. The team is tiny. They've never run large teams earlier. We first assess whether the customer will want what they are trying to produce and sell. We look for evidence of that. We call it natural traction or some compelling value proposition or a hook, right? Once we are convinced that that exists, then we look at the team. And very often at the early stage, because the people are young, it's a leap of faith and a judgment call. And we often get it wrong, and we sometimes get it right. Okay. So guys running a team of 8 people, जब ये कंपनी बड़ी होगी और अगर 5 साल में बड़ी हुई तो 3,000 लोग होंगे. Can this guy who's 28 today run a team of 3,000 people 5 years out, 7 years out? How will he grow? How will he mature? You're taking a judgment call on that. How will he treat his minority shareholders? What is the strategic thinking like? He's a product tech guy. He's 28 years old. He needs to hire a sales team to actually make sales happen. Very often, the sales guys will be older than him. Can he deal with that? And can they deal with him? Right? So you can have a bunch of questions that you ask yourself about the person in the team. And you really can't answer them precisely because you have very little information and he has no track record in all those areas, he or she, right? And then, you sort of kick the tires, poke around, and then go in and hope for the best and pray hard.
Yeah. Thank you. I heard 2 things here, Sanjeev, and let me just take one step at a time. You mentioned about every time when you make a judgment on the young entrepreneurs, often the judgments are wrong and sometimes it's right, it's correct, right? So it tells me about your relationship with risk, right? So would love to understand on what basis do you evaluate that if we should be investing, even if it might go wrong. That's the first thing. The second thing that you shared is that you asked this question that right now this gentleman is 28, this entrepreneur is 28. Would he be able to manage a team when the person is at an age of, let's say, 33, 34, 5 years from now, right? Now, first question, in your journey, how have you nurtured your relationship with risk? That's the first question. And then I'm going to ask you the next question around development, human development.
So look, I am actually a huge darpok. I am very risk averse. Okay. So therefore, we dissect the risk 100 different ways to understand it better, comprehend it. We discuss it. And then when we do go in with a small check initially. That agar hum galat bhi hoye na, to nuksan itna hoga, itna nahi hoga, right? And then as the company progresses, we put in more money and put in more money and put in more money. So that's how we look at risk. A lot of the risk is around competition. Is there an established incumbent? Is it a network effect market? If it's an established incumbent in the network effect market, it's very, very risky to go in, no matter how talented this guy may be. Right? If it's not a winner-take-all market, it's one thing. It's lower risk probably, but it's also then your defenses against competition are also weak. Right? So we look at this risk thing and dissect it maybe 20, 30 different ways, 100 different ways. So we do our best to understand risk. So I fundamentally believe what differentiates a good entrepreneur from a great entrepreneur is his or her ability to understand and manage and comprehend risk.
Got it.
Anybody can see the opportunity and the upside, but very few are good at understanding, appreciating, managing, and comprehending risk.
Yeah, that's the reason I was very curious. And in your language, when you said, I'm a big darpok, though I don't believe so, but on the face value, okay, I just accept, let me be with this thought. Talking to you, Sanjeev ji, bursting a lot of myths that I had. And thank you for being who you are. So let's take one step forward. Help me understand, what is your go-to strategy when you are looking for your personal development and leadership growth in all these years? What is it that you go back to? Do you attend programs? Do you have a mentor for yourself? Do you have a coach for yourself? Do you sit alone? Do you read books?
I find it not very difficult to understand and read about strategy. Right? थोड़ा बहुत दिमाग है, मैं पढ़ाई कर लेता हूँ, तो समझ आ जाता है, ठीक है? So that's not what I look for in my development. I don't believe I'm deficient there.
Yeah.
Right? Where I have always struggled and tried to comprehend stuff better and try to do stuff better is this business around people. Right? The softer skills.
Yeah.
Okay. I find I'm able to communicate, and I learned communication, just by practice. So, when I became an entrepreneur, I was broke half the time. So I began to teach on evenings and weekends at business schools in and around Delhi. It's public speaking when you're going out there and teaching a class of 70 people, right? And they're questioning you and cross-questioning you, and you're managing. So 3 years of doing that, I became decent at public speaking. I won't say great, but decent. I became comfortable. Before that, I was terrible. I would get nervous, stressed, stammer, sweat, and do make a hash of things. But practice is ho gaya. So communication was okay. I was a journalist for a while. I took up a second job because I needed the money. Now I could always write. I mean, but now I'm writing for a living.
Yeah.
So my writing really improved. So communication became okay. Strategy was always okay. It's people management. Although I learned it at Lintas, I had to continuously work on it, continuously develop, right? And then the ability to actually give others confidence that your path is right. This company is following the right path.
Yeah.
So I remember when we raised venture capital in April 2000, the market melted down almost immediately. The dot-com bubble burst. There was a point in time when our monthly salary bill was 4 times our sales. Forget about all other overheads, and we had 16 months of money left. Now, at that time, to be able to stick it out and retain people and tell people hum kar payenge or kar lenge. Now, naturally, I was helped by the fact that we had a great team at top. So Hitesh Oberoi, who's the CEO now, he led the sales effort then, and that's what saved the company. But this whole people thing is where I think one should always try and improve. You can never be good enough at it.
Thank you, Sanjeev ji, for sharing that. As much as we call all these skills as soft skills, they're harder to learn. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, your experiences. And I genuinely loved every single word of wisdom that you shared from your experience. And shukran, it was an absolute delight to have you here, sir. Thank you so much. And looking forward to interacting with you sometime soon.
Thank you so much for inviting me.